"We already have enough freeloaders in this family," my mother hissed across the crowded dining hall, ensuring everyone at the table heard her. She glanced at me with disgust before turning to flatter my elder sister's golden child status. I didn't cause a scene. I simply smiled, grabbed my glass and walked over to the quietest corner of the venue. 15 minutes later, the main guest of honor arrived. My sister's husband, Marcus, a highly decorated commander in the United States Navy. My mother practically sprinted over to greet him, calling out, "Our real hero has finally arrived." But Marcus didn't even look at her. He walked right past her extended arms, marched straight toward my shadowed corner, came to a hard stop, and snapped a crisp, perfectly timed salute. "Ma'am," his voice boomed, turning every single head in the dead-silent room. "My name is Rachel and I'm 27 years old. For as long as I can remember, my life has been defined by the silent, suffocating shadow of my family's relentless favoritism. My mother, Eleanor, operated on a strict hierarchy where status, bravado, and visible success were the only currencies that mattered. To her, my older sister, Vanessa, was the golden child, a polished socialite who married well, talked loudly, and absorbed every ounce of praise our mother could muster. I, on the other hand, was the family's perpetual disappointment. I kept my head down, lived modestly, and worked in quietly classified logistics, a job I couldn't freely brag about at Sunday dinners. Because I didn't drive a sports car or flaunt designer handbags, Eleanor treated me like a silent failure, convincing herself that I had barely scraped by in life. She constantly reminded everyone that I was the black sheep who lacked true ambition. Tonight was supposed to be the ultimate crowning achievement for the family. My parents had pulled out all the stops to host a grand banquet at a high-end country club. The event was thrown to honor my sister's husband, Marcus, a highly decorated commander in the United States Navy who was returning home after a lengthy overseas deployment and a major promotion. Eleanor had spent weeks bragging to every relative, neighbor, and local politician about her hero son-in-law. The venue was packed with military brass, local elites, and distant family, all eager to rub shoulders with greatness. I had shown up quietly in a plain, elegant dress, wanting only to pay my respects and survive another family gathering. But I knew that in my mother's eyes, my presence was nothing more than an eyesore. The banquet hall hummed with polite laughter and the clink of expensive crystal, but at our main table the atmosphere was suffocating. My mother sat at the center of it all, beaming with unearned pride as she held court among our extended relatives. She spent the first hour parading Vanessa's social calendar and making sure everyone knew just how elite our family had become. Then her eyes landed on me. "Look at you, Rachel," Eleanor said, her voice dropping into that familiar, cutting tone designed to sound like innocent concern while delivering maximum damage. "Still wearing off-the-rack clothes, still keeping those little obscure desk jobs. I really don't know where we went wrong with you." Vanessa chuckled softly into her wine glass, while a few distant aunts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I kept my expression carefully neutral, cutting into my chicken without offering her the reaction she so desperately wanted. My silence only irritated her more. Eleanor leaned back, raised her glass, and spoke loud enough for the neighboring tables to turn and look. "We already have enough freeloaders in this family. The least you could do is pretend you have some pride when Marcus gets here." The insult hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. It was classic Eleanor, a public humiliation meant to put me in my place before the real VIP arrived. Instead of taking the bait or starting a screaming match that would only make me look unreasonable, I simply set my fork down. I smiled coldly, picked up my glass of water and stood up. Without saying a single word, I turned my back on the main table and walked away, navigating through the crowd until I reached a quiet, dimly lit table in the furthest corner of the hall. I sat down alone in the shadows, fully aware of the whispers following me, and waited for the main event to begin. The heavy double doors at the entrance of the banquet hall swung open, and the entire room fell into an expectant hush. Commander Marcus stepped through, immaculate in his dark navy dress uniform. Gold braid caught the chandelier light, and rows of ribbons and medals adorned his chest, silent markers of years spent in places most people in this room would never see. He stood tall, carrying the formidable, immovable presence of a seasoned military officer. The second my mother spotted him, her face lit up with absolute triumph. Seeing the perfect opportunity to command the room's attention, Eleanor practically sprinted toward the entrance, arms open wide and her voice booming across the polished floorboards. "Everyone look. Our real hero has finally arrived," she announced, her chest swelling with unearned pride as she tried to usher him toward the head table. Marcus, however, didn't slow his stride. He didn't smile, and he certainly didn't accept her grand welcome. He walked right past Eleanor's extended arms, leaving her frozen in midair as if she were completely invisible. His sharp, focused eyes scanned the room, bypassing the glittering center tables, the local politicians and my sister, who stood frozen with a half-empty glass in her hand. Marcus marched with precise, measured authority straight toward the back of the venue. He moved directly toward the dark, isolated corner where I sat alone in the shadows. The sudden change in his trajectory sent a wave of confused mutters through the crowd. He came to a hard, crisp stop right in front of my small table. Marcus brought his heels together, locked his spine straight, and raised his right hand, snapping a flawless, rigid military salute directly at me. "Ma'am." His voice boomed across the dead-silent hall. The silence in the grand hall was absolute. Every eye was locked on my small corner table, where a highly decorated Navy commander remained held in a rigid salute before me. My mother stood frozen near the entrance, her jaw slightly open, completely unable to process what she was witnessing. Marcus lowered his hand with deliberate precision, his authoritative posture softening just enough to convey deep, genuine reverence. "Commander," I said softly, giving him a quiet nod. "It's good to see you home." "It's an honor to stand before you again, Director," Marcus replied, his voice carrying effortlessly through the quiet room. He turned slightly toward the staring crowd, ensuring every single person, especially my mother and sister, heard his next words. "Many of you know me for my rank and the medals on this uniform," Marcus announced, looking directly at Eleanor. "But what you do not know is that I wouldn't be standing here tonight, and my entire unit wouldn't have made it back from foreign soil 4 years ago, if it weren't for this woman right here." A collective gasp echoed through the room. Marcus looked back at me, his expression full of gratitude. While my team was pinned down in contested territory during Operation Shadow Gate, running out of time and options, it was Rachel who spearheaded the covert tactical logistics from a secure bunker halfway across the world, he explained. She coordinated real-time intelligence, bypassed red tape, and cleared an extraction route when everyone else said it was impossible. To the public, she works a quiet desk job. But to special operations, she is a legend. My mother's face drained of all color. The quiet, unambitious daughter she had spent years belittling was the very strategist who had saved her hero son-in-law's life. My mother stood paralyzed, her face cycling through shock, humiliation, and utter disbelief. The carefully constructed narrative she had pushed for years, that I was a baseline failure while my sister was the pinnacle of success, had just been dismantled in front of the city's elite by the very man she idolized. She cleared her throat, forcing a high-pitched, awkward chuckle as she took a tentative step forward. "Marcus, dear," Eleanor stammered, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to regain control of the room. "Surely you're exaggerating, Rachel. A strategist, she works in basic administration. You must have her confused with someone else." Vanessa stepped up beside our mother, her face burning with embarrassment as she glared at her husband. "Marcus, please, you're making a scene. Today is about your promotion." Marcus didn't flinch. He turned toward Eleanor, his posture rigid and his eyes like cold steel. "I do not make mistakes regarding the people who keep my operators alive, Eleanor. Rachel's high-level security clearance and strategic brilliance are the sole reasons I am standing in this uniform tonight." He looked around the room, making eye contact with the stunned relatives who had spent the evening laughing at my expense. "I heard what was said before I walked through those doors," Marcus added, his voice ringing with absolute authority. "Calling a decorated intelligence operative who routinely safeguards national security a freeloader isn't just ignorant. It is an insult to everyone who wears this uniform. She has earned more respect than anyone else in this room." Vanessa shrank back, completely speechless. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out as the quiet dignity of my true work silenced her completely. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife, but the evening's revelations were far from over. As my mother stood exposed and speechless, I slowly stood up from my chair, taking a calm step toward her. "Since we're talking about freeloaders, Eleanor, maybe it's time we set the rest of the record straight," I said, my voice steady and clear enough for every nearby table to hear. She blinked, panic flashing in her eyes. Rachel, don't do this here. For the past 3 years, I continued, you've bragged to the family about how your smart investments were paying off your mortgage and covering your mounting medical bills. You let everyone believe you managed it all on your own while judging my lifestyle. I paused, letting the weight of the room's gaze sink in. The anonymous trust fund that's been sending $5,000 to your bank account on the first of every month? The one quietly erasing your debt so you wouldn't lose your house. I looked her dead in the eye. That wasn't an investment fund, Eleanor. That was me. The unambitious daughter whose money you've been living off of while publicly humiliating me. A collective gasp rippled through the venue. My relatives exchanged horrified glances, finally realizing the true depth of Eleanor's arrogance and deception. My mother's face went entirely pale. Her knees buckled slightly and she had to grab the edge of a chair to steady herself. The grand image of authority she had built over a lifetime collapsed in a single moment, shattered by the daughter she had tried so hard to diminish. I picked up my purse from the table and looked at my mother one last time. There was no anger left in me, only the quiet, liberating weight of absolute clarity. The anonymous financial support stops tonight, Eleanor, I said, my tone completely even. I've spent years quietly protecting this family both at work and at home, while letting you treat me like an afterthought. But respect is earned, not demanded. And I am done paying for yours. Eleanor opened her mouth, her lips trembling as she tried to form an apology or plead for forgiveness, but the words died in her throat. She looked small, stripped of her pride, standing alone in a room full of people who now saw her for exactly who she was. Marcus stepped beside me, offering a polite nod. If you're ready to leave, Director, my team and I would be honored if you joined us for dinner down the street. Somewhere with better company. I'd like that, Commander, I replied with a genuine smile. As we walked out of the banquet hall together, leaving behind the whispers, the broken expectations and the shattered lies, I felt a lightness in my chest I hadn't experienced in years. I didn't need their approval, their recognition, or their false praises anymore. I had my truth, my dignity, and my freedom, and for the first time in my life that was more than enough.